Hey basketball players, today I'm going to be talking to you about how I dealt and how you can deal better with career-ending injuries. So to start off the whole story about my career-ending injury is when I went down to the States to play professionally in the NBA Development League. It's now called the G League. And I can't even really call it a career, really, to be honest with you, because it was 2 days. That's all I had. And I barely got there. I kind of got lucky to get there, but it only lasted 2 days because of an injury. And I'm not going to say which team because you're going to be searching it up, and I'm just not mentioned anywhere because I only lasted 2 days. I never even got into a game. Now, what happened to me is what happens to a lot of players when it comes to career-ending injuries. And my injury was a torn ACL, MCL, and meniscus. So the unlucky triad, as they call it. And it's really painful, I'll tell you that, but came back to Canada, got my doctor, and basically went straight to the hospital when I got back to Canada because we knew it was really bad. I'm not going to be able to treat it over in the States. At least I want to have a Canadian doctor because it's just more locally closer to me. And so I went to the doctor, I went to the hospital, got a surgeon right away. Because the swelling was so bad, and basically what they said was there's too much swelling. We know you've torn a lot of ligaments in your knee. We're going to go in 1 week and do an exploratory, and at the same time, if there's any issues with the meniscus, we're going to go and fix the meniscus. So went through that surgery, and basically a couple of hours after, the doctor came in and said, hey, you've got ACL, MCL, and meniscus. You've torn all three. We're going to need to do a ACL reconstruction on you. We're going to be looking into doing an MCL reconstruction, which they never needed to do, and then they needed to do a reconstruction of the meniscus. They cut off some of the tears, but they needed to go in and do a full meniscus, essentially a replacement. I guess they put like a gel pad or something in it. I'm not too sure how they did it, but they never ended up having to do it because it's just, apparently I was not a good candidate for that to happen. So I only had an ACL reconstruction. And then from there, after that first surgery, he also mentioned that I have maybe a 1% chance of making it back to the league when it comes to recovering from that kind of an injury. So at that point on, I had it in my mind, I'm gonna make it back, I'll make it, I'll be fine. About 2 or 3 days after getting home from that surgery, I started getting really, really bad pain in my calf. And if you ever have a knee surgery, this is something that you really need to watch out for, and that is calf pain. So I went back to my own family doctor. She said, oh yeah, it's just the way they bend your knee when they're trying to get into different areas of the knee. It's fine, it's just a muscle spasm, a muscle strain, it's fine. So another couple of days went by, and I went to an emergency care center that's closer to my house than what the hospital was. And they said the same thing. Yeah, they just pull your knee in different, or your leg in different directions. It's just a muscle pull, nothing to worry about. And then a couple more days went by. This is about a week now with this pain. And I'm sitting there in my house. My calf is swollen. It's all bruised. So I'm like, something's wrong. This is not a sprain. It felt like a sprain at first. Now it's just not a sprain. So I went back to the original hospital and they were freaking out. They basically lost their minds. They're like, you never came back with calf pain? And nobody explained this to me. It wasn't like they give you a pamphlet saying, hey, if you have calf pain, you got something wrong, come back. No. So they do all these scans, a whole bunch of different scans on the leg, and they found out that I had multiple blood clots. And that now sets back my second knee surgery, which was that ACL reconstruction, from being a month later to now being a whole year later. And the reason why I'm actually telling you this story, because it actually happened pretty well 10 years ago to this day, give or take 2 or 3 weeks. So that's the story behind that ACL anyways. And then going from there, had to wait a year to have that ACL surgery. So at that point, there's no chance of coming back. The way I made it to the league, I never had the chance or ability to get back there with taking a whole year off. So going back to the whole calf pain, when you get blood clots, at least they call them DVTs, which is what I had after my knee surgery. And what you get put on is warfarin, which is like a blood thinner, but they also put you on these needles that you need to jab yourself in the gut once a day. At first I had to do it twice a day, and then later on once a day. And if you go in too fast, it feels like somebody's punched you in the gut. And then if you go in too slow, that's the way you really want to go, is really slow, and it works. If you go in too fast, it feels like somebody's punched you in the gut and it gives you a big bruise. So I had quite a few bruises. And because it was a career-ending injury, you'll probably hear this from a lot of different athletes. They go through different stages. And if you're going through a career-ending injury right now, you might be going through a few of these stages. So at first, you have the disbelief, no, I'll make it back. And then once you figure out, yeah, this isn't gonna happen, you get into the second stage, which is basically the woe is me stage, which you go into some kind of a depression. And I gained a lot of weight. I used food as my medicine at that point, essentially. And some people just never get out of that second phase, and then they basically continue that for the rest of their lives. Some people will get hooked onto painkillers, and I can see how that can happen. Basically, after my second knee surgery, they put me on, they called it oxycodone or something like that, which is basically Oxycontin for the pain, because you're getting a lot of pain. Originally, after the second surgery, for the first, I was supposed to be the first 3 or 4 days after the second surgery, I was supposed to be on morphine. I couldn't. After a couple of hours on morphine, they learned that I was somewhat sort of allergic to it. So yeah. And then they put me on those Oxycontin pill things. And I can see how people can get addicted to those, because it doesn't really cancel out the pain, but it makes you not care about the pain. So it was kind of a weird feeling. And then I got off those fast because I still had pain and I cared about the pain. I didn't care about the not feeling of the pain, and or the not caring of the pain. But I was on Tylenol for a long time, to a point where I was taking too many, and I almost had, it was kidney failure, I think they called it. So yeah, be careful when you start taking those painkillers. But now 10 years later, here I am on the basketball court making more videos for YouTube. So basically, I took this as a positive for how much knowledge I have in the game, not necessarily because of where I went and played, but because of all the research I did when I was younger, all the training that I did when I was younger. I have a unique kind of stance on how you can work to make it to the league, because in my mind, I was lucky to get there. But when I really look back, it was all the work that I put in, the hours and hours of research into basketball every single day. I was more of a smart player, not necessarily a skillful player. I could shoot the ball really well. I could handle the ball competently. I couldn't do anything flashy, but I was able to drive on players, kind of like a Kyle Lowry, I guess you could say, in current form. Somebody who could get to the rim and score on smaller defenders, and somebody who could shoot. That was my thing. I could post up players. So all the work, all the research I did to be able to learn how to gain advantages on players, I was able to use that to get to the league, to the D League that was. So I hope that this at least gives you some insight into my life, but also gives you a little bit of knowledge if you're going through a career-ending injury right now, or if you're just looking for inspiration. That's what this is more about. You may feel sad that I'm no longer in the D League. Don't be, because then I wouldn't be here helping you. So that's how I look at it. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.